have up next a gentleman who I've got to know a little bit over the last little bit. His name's Cory Henwood. He's from Iron County School District, and he comes to Iron as a digital teaching and learning specialist extraordinaire. This guy is pretty impressive. If you don't know him, he is a math teacher from a previous life. He still loves the math teacher. He's got all that math nerd in him still. It still comes out frequently. So if you're not a math person, get ready. You're just turning into one. So Cory's great. I love working with him, and you're going to hear a lot of work with him today as he shares some awesome stuff. So Cory Henwood, give a round of applause.
All right, thank you, Derek. Hey, thanks for coming to see a little bit about empowerment today. I'm Cory Henwood. I've been a math teacher, as Derek alluded to. I've also been an administrator and now into EdTech at Iron County. And I'm excited to be here today to talk to you a little bit about something that I'm very passionate about. There's a shift that needs to occur in education, that is occurring, that we need to put our weight behind. And that is the shift from teachers, how they've traditionally used power in the classroom, to how we must now share power and extend our own power to the students today. Away from simple compliance-based learning to the tedious, monotonous, meaningless things that our students have done, to our more student-based, empowered, passion-based learning, okay? So we're going to talk a little bit about this. The way I wanted to start this off was something just totally non-controversial at all. We're going to talk about Kim Jong-un, okay? And regardless of whether you are a fan of Kim Jong-un, this is a powerful man. And over the last 6 years that he's been in power, he has consolidated that power. He has consolidated control over not just the government, but also the media, also the borders, whether you come in and out of the country, the economy, the food supply. I mean, this guy even claims to control the weather. So, yes, a very powerful figure, right? Nuclear weapons, the whole bit. When I think about power, I think about words like control. I think about words like force. I think about authority. Those are the things that I think about with power. But I want to shift that a little bit. And I want you to look at another strikingly similar image to somebody who is empowering. Dr. King took a people who were resentful, maybe of their position, maybe a little angry about how society treated them, and he rallied these people together, right? And so his idea of leadership is about transforming that anger into another transformable power. And when I think about empowerment, I think about words like investing in people, building capacity, entrusting, right? Those are the kind of things I think about when I think about empowering. And so the difference between power and empower is becoming a little more clear, but you need power, likely, to empower. And so the question from today's discussion is going to be about how do we empower with EdTech? How do we empower our students? Okay, what tools can we give them? And I want to first start by noting for certain that educators are not powerless, but we have a good amount of power. Okay? We control often the day-to-day, what happens in our classrooms or in our buildings. We have a lot of power. And so the question is, how do you use that power? Which one of these leaders are you more like in your classroom? Okay? And if we clutch to our power with an iron fist and we rule in our classrooms and we hold on to that power so tightly, you'll notice that it diminishes. And so instead of that, let loose a little bit, okay? Share that power with your students and allow that power to expand instead of diminish. This, I want you to think about your actions as we go through this that you've seen in your classrooms or in others, and think about the shifts you might make. We're first going to talk about why. Why is this even important? Why should I bother empowering my students? Is this something that they really need? And you might think the answer to that is obvious, but many teachers might think and might disagree that it might not be all that important. In fact, I will see more gains, more immediate gains, if I require compliance in my classroom, and if I make sure that they respect my authority in the classroom, to the fullest extent and rule and motivate a little bit by fear that, I'm going to get you in trouble otherwise, or you won't get a good grade in my class, and it's very teacher-centric, right? So why is it important? You might actually move the needle a little sooner in the short term if you were to operate that way, but in the long term, the effects are not quite the same. And I want to look at why it's important to empower. First, through these three levels. First, where our students are at now in school and their learning, and beyond to their work and to their life, and why that would be important. So first, let's talk about their school. How does empowerment help our students in their learning? Okay, and to start that discussion off, let's just maybe define a few terms here about how students act in our classrooms and why they act that way. Okay, from compliance to do what I told you to do, and that's why you act that way. To engagement and having students are doing things because they're excited about them, because you've made them a little bit kind of stirred up about it. Otherwise, empowerment to do something because it's meaningful to you, because you're passionate about it. And the difference that each of these levels make. Just to define the difference a little more clearly between engagement and empowerment, this graphic really does it for me. Engagement is about getting students excited about our content, our curricula, our interests, the things we want them to do, right? You're engaged, you're participating with me. Whereas empowerment is about their interests, giving them the skills, the opportunities, okay, the knowledge they need to further their own ambitions, their own futures, their own passions. So there is a contrast there between those two things. And empowerment, from what I have found, and I'm guessing you'll agree with this statement, that it leads to two very real winners when you're talking about learning. And the first is persistence. Okay? You're far more likely to be persistent, to go through struggle despite the struggles and obstacles in front of you, if you are feeling empowered, if this is your own direction. Okay? And it aligns with your own interests. Let me give you an analogy. Let's say beyond the walls of this room here, there is a child, and you know that child is helpless and needs your help and is crying. And you're saying, okay, I got to get over there and help that kid. But instead, there is a lion on a leash in front of me, and I hate cats. That's why I choose a lion. Okay, and then there is a pond of alligators, and I hate swimming. And then beyond that, there is a pitfall of death, and I don't like dying. So there are those things keeping me from that student. And so will I go? How many of you would go to help that student if those obstacles were in front of you? How many would you go? Nobody? I was expecting some liars in the room. No liars. This is great. Thank you for being honest. Okay, now, slight shift. The kid is now your own. It's your own child, or it's your grandchild, or whomever. Okay. Now how many would go? And I would go. Okay, only a few of you would go. That's okay. All right, I'm going to leave. No. So yeah, right, you would go. And the difference there is because your interest has changed. And nothing else in this scenario has changed other than your own interest in the end goal, right? And so I'm willing to persist beyond these obstacles, beyond these struggles, because of my own interest, passion, my own love for this child. Okay, so that's the first clear winner. The second is deeper learning, right? You're willing to go much further, much deeper. Think about John Couch's story he told about his son and the frog legs project. How deep he went with that. If you saw that this morning, like he went far, right? And that wasn't because his teacher told him to do that. Well beyond the requirements. Explore, find new questions that haven't been discussed yet, and go further and further. If you think about compliance as the person kind of dusting around the edges here in this digging picture, and then to engagement, okay, where you're willing to dig a little bit, you're willing to get a little bit dirty, try it out, maybe find a few nuggets, okay? And then to the empowered person who goes deep to find the gold mine, okay? So this is the clear winners of empowerment in student learning. But the benefits aren't just there. Let's go beyond that to work. Okay, there was a study done by David Otter at MIT, and the study came about because David Otter wanted to know, like, hey, our job's going to disappear because computers are automating what we do on a day-to-day basis. Okay, our job's just going to be totally taken over by robotics and computers and algorithms. Okay, are they disappearing? Are we all going to be out of jobs soon? He was worried about this, so he studied it. And what he found were some interesting things. There were many jobs that were being lost, given the industrial age revolutions, the information age revolutions. Okay, there were many jobs that were being lost. but they were in a particular classification. He classified them as routine jobs, routine tasks, things that could be automated easily, okay? Versus the non-routine jobs, the things that were not easily scripted, okay? And those pieces were actually growing. Those jobs were growing. And so I'm going to show you this here, this part of his study, where we see the non-routine pieces in the green and the blue skyrocketing onward. This is from the 1960s on. And the job share of those in routine fields plummeting, okay? And so what does this mean for us and how we approach our students? It means this: the compliance, come to work, show up at 9, say, boss, what do you want me to do today? Here's your list, here's exactly how I want you to do it. You clock in, you do those things, you clock out, you go home, and you're the best employee. Those days are soon dwindling, if not already gone. Okay? Those compliance-based jobs, the tedious jobs, okay, that compliance-based workforce, that is disappearing. And in contrast, the non-routine skills, those pieces that require human skill, those are growing. And so we need people who are self-directed enough, who are empowered, who are willing to dig deeper and further on their own accord to fill those positions. And companies are eagerly searching after them. So let's dive into exactly what I'm talking about with what are those jobs. So as I mentioned, the industrial and technical age has produced machinery to replace many of these types of jobs in this lower left-hand quadrant. The low manual, so not a whole lot of cognitive demand, and they're routine. They can be easily programmed, okay, easily made into machines. So at a warehouse or an assembly. So those are pieces that are easily managed. And then beyond that, if I go into the top left here now, these are the jobs that are currently, or might even be considered white-collar jobs, high cognitive demand possibly, or some training that was involved. And these are being replaced by the information age and software, search engines, right? Algorithms, programs, robotics possibly, okay? These are being replaced. And so these are the jobs that are kind of moving along. And not only would you notice that these are being automated and dwindling away, right? But they're not altogether all that fulfilling of jobs. I wouldn't rate, it takes a special person to be a bookkeeper and to really find that fulfilling. And so these are the jobs that are kind of petering off. And the jobs that are growing on the other side that we're going to look at require the human touch. They require problem solving, intuition, creativity, persuasion, these types of pieces. So we look at that. Even those that do not require a high cognitive amount of training, so in many cases under the service industry or others, right? Trainers, security, waiters, these kind of things, these jobs are actually growing. And beyond that, to the higher cognitive demand, these pieces that really are designing the new innovations of our day. Okay, doesn't this kind of graphic, you notice a job I left off? Yeah, doesn't it beg the question, like, where are teachers in this, right? Which quadrant are our teachers working in? And we'd like to say maybe in that top right quadrant, wouldn't we? We'd like to say, yeah, we're innovating all the time, but in reality, we're kind of all four, aren't we? Like, and we're in the back of the class scrubbing the desks and getting the gum off of them, right? That's maybe in that lower level quadrant, that routine manual task. But in essence, we're in a bit of all four. And we'd like to be maybe a little bit more in the new design, innovation, push the limits, break the mold. Okay, and where are our students working? That's the second question I asked. Like, where are our students working at? What are we requiring of them? What are we preparing them for? And so if I look at these tasks that students are doing, and I say, look, okay, yeah, they're maybe memorizing some things, as John Couch mentioned earlier, but they're also they're doing some analysis, they're researching a little bit, they're computing, they're solving math problems. That's problem solving, right? They're solving math problems and exercises. These are good things. Well, these are things that are generally right now automated. Like, you can go to an app or online and find the answer immediately. Like, those aren't things that require necessarily the human touch. Whereas solving more applicable problems or redesigning more particular solutions, those are really what we're looking for. And it's unfortunate to me that we spend so much of our time in the left-hand side of this with our students. Like, that they spend so much time on these tasks when they will always be competing with somebody that's better than them at these things, and those are computers. Like, they're always going to be better at memorizing dates and computing math problems than they are. And so I think, oh my gosh, why are we setting our kids up to fail in that way instead of empowering them with the skills that are going to complement what computers already do well? We need to set them up with these types of skills, right? These 21st century skills we talk about often, to let them be that complement and work alongside in their newfound jobs in today's economy and the future's economy to really make value for themselves and be empowered and feel powerful, like they have something to give and not necessarily be always like thinking that they need to compete with a computer. Okay, and one of the things that I profess that would be excellent for this is the Google test. And the Google test is this. It is if the task that you're putting forward to your students, if the end goal of that task could be done by a computer, search engine, Google, or an app, then your task isn't going far enough. Like, it's just not good enough. If they can go and find the answer on the internet, and that's the end of your task or exercise, that's just not a good enough exercise. Our learning targets and our learning goals need to go beyond what a computer can do. Okay? I'm not saying you don't ever include those things, like you never do a computational math problem again, or you never do those things. Yeah, you'll do those. But it needs to go beyond that. It can't just stay there. Okay? We need to prepare our kids by going a little bit further beyond. And we need to find balance. Okay? We need to find that balance so that our students can balance the skills of computers with the skills that we're requiring of humans, right, in the 21st century. Simon Sinek said this, you know, he's excellent, very wise man. Talked about how technology is all around us, it's all encompassing, it's everywhere, and it promotes that instant gratification, okay? That instant feedback, get it right now. It promotes that a little bit, right? Like, if you want to buy something right now, you go to Amazon, boom, it's there. Next day. You can ship it next day, it's there, right? You don't go to the store, you buy it on Amazon. Okay, if you want to go watch a movie, you log on, you watch a movie. Like, you don't go check movie times, you log on. You want to watch a season of a TV show? Binge. Like, yeah, it's there for you. In fact, skip the season and skip the next season so you can go through and binge a couple, right? Like, instant gratification. I would not want to wait season to season anymore. Yeah, so instant gratification. Get what you want right now, right? Like, hey, you want to go on a date? Like, you don't need to learn to, like, hey, girl, none of that. You don't need to learn that skill anymore, right? Like, I'm sure that was very appealing for you guys. But you don't need to learn that skill anymore. Like, you don't need to know that, like, yes is no and no is yes or any of that. Like, you go to Tinder and boom, swipe right and you're a stud, right? Like, this is the day that we live in, instant gratification. And it's all right there for you. It's there on, like, at your fingertips all the time. Instant gratification, except for job satisfaction and strength of relationships and love. Like, there's no app for that. Right? So the things that really matter to us, there's no app for that. It's not instant gratification. So it kind of brings me into my last circle of life and finding balance with technology there and teaching our students to be empowered with the technologies that they have. Okay? You can do so much more than look for that instant gratification all the time, and notice that your technology, it can sometimes be a hindrance to that. Like, show your wife you love her by maybe saying and greeting to her and kissing her before you look at your phone in the morning. Like, she'll love you all the more for it, right? Or maybe like in your conference room with all your coworkers, instead of sitting there twiddling your thumbs all the time and everybody looking around on their phone, right, the whole time. Like, maybe we want to ask each other, like, hey, I heard your mother was in the hospital, she's been sick. Like, maybe could I help you out with some of your projects that you're working on? Oh yeah, would you do that really? Yeah. Like, those are how relationships and meaningful pieces are made in our lives, and maybe we could take a little less time on technology, and instead of having it always encroach in our lives for the human skills and encroaching on those things, maybe we complement ourselves a little bit better and balance ourselves a little bit better. I'm certainly not saying, like, avoid technology. I wouldn't be speaking at UCET if I was like, avoid technology at all costs, right? Like, that would be bad. But what I am saying is this. Like, there is certainly a balance to be had, and computers can do many of the things and automate many of the things for us, and we can use technology appropriately and effectively to make those things more efficient and more effective in our lives, so we can take the time to focus on the things that are most meaningful. And that's what we should also be doing in our classrooms, in my own opinion. So I hope that you've maybe seen a little bit more and more profoundly, like, why we must empower students not just for their current learning, but also to help them move beyond learning the skills of computers to building more human skills, to give them a more balanced, a more deeper meaning, and a more of a life of balance, right? So this is important to me. I think about leadership and kind of where this goes for teachers. Like I said, educators are leaders by design. And we want to create student leaders, right? We want to create the people that we're going to be putting our economy and our welfare in their hands. We want to create student leadership. So how do we do that? How do we empower them? Can I back up to a bit of my story? So I started, when I moved to the United States, I'm from Canada, by the way, if you haven't heard any bar or yard or anything, any of my other weird words. All right, Canada, woo! So when I moved to the United States for the first time, I moved to the great state of California, and I began teaching in, this is a real place, and you're already like, what? Is this for real? Yeah, it is. I began my teaching career in the United States in Los Baños. And if you didn't take a year of Spanish, or actually if you didn't take the first day of Spanish and then drop it, like you might not know this word, but if you did, like you probably know Los Baños is, right, the bathrooms, and you're like, okay, this place is called Los Baños. Yeah, so this literal crap hole, and I say that lovingly, was where I began my career, and actually I loved it there, so I have to say that. But, you know, it's very high English language learner population, very high free and reduced lunch, like 95% free and reduced lunch at the high school I worked at. And I taught math, the most engaging subject of all for many of our students, of course. And so I have this cream of the socioeconomic crop in front of me. And I'm here to kind of take this group that is feeling depressed, oppressed, right? They're not comfortable, and in fact, much of the oppression they felt came from maybe their teachers, like do this, like kind of ruling their life. And I was a young, very young educator. I thought, well, maybe I'll share some of my power with this group and help them direct and give them some choice, like make them feel valuable in my classroom and empower them to love learning and find meaning, even in mathematics and choice. So maybe the next time you think about like how you're going to work within your classroom, and maybe set a deadline that like you will not allow any students to make up beyond this point, you have a 0, those kind of things. Or if you're an administrator and you want to mandate to your teachers like this is how it's going to be done, and you don't provide the funding or the support or the time, I want you to think about this and like let my people go, right? Like let them have some power here, okay? Because that empowering, if you're looking to get more out of your students or out of your teachers, if you're an administrator or support to teachers, they'll give you blood, sweat, and tears if you're willing to empower them and give them and trust in them and invest in them. And that's what I know to be true. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to do that and how I've done that with my students or my teachers. Give choice and voice. And this is important. So, oftentimes when you think about choice and voice, we're talking about giving them opportunities to direct the learning, to give input, right? And so that's just what I've done. But also, like, often you think that needs to be individualized, like it always has to be an individual deciding where they want to go or a small group. There's opportunities to do that even with your whole class, okay, to allow you to do that. And I want to show you a little bit of how I did that in mathematics. The most engaging of all subjects I refer to it as, and show you how to do that a little bit and what that might look like. So I've got this video here, and I want you to do this, interact with me here a little bit. So I want you to tell me the question that comes to your mind from the video. So when we watch the video, you're going to think of a question, something that you would like to figure out, something you wonder about, okay? And we're going to go from there based off your responses. It's Girl Scout cookie season, and we love cookies. Okay, short video. So, what questions come to your mind, or what would you like to figure out? What do you wonder from this quick video?
How many boxes?
How many boxes? Okay, how many had that question? How many boxes? How many calories? Very good. Yeah. How many calories is this going to cost me later to work out? Thank you. How much money is that? Very good. Okay. Yeah.
Who's that Girl Scout going to Washington next summer?
That's right. Yeah. And when are they coming to my house with all those cookies? Right. Okay, good. So many of these questions, okay, so we're going to try to tackle some of these together. The first one I got was how many boxes? And so I want to get your estimate there. Can you estimate how many boxes are there? And just turn to like shoulder partner or neighbor, like give me your estimate of what you think that is. What do you think that number is? Go ahead, do that now. If you don't do it now, they won't believe you when you were right later. Okay, so we've given our estimates, yes? Oh, there's some calculation going on in the front row. Overachievers. I'm just kidding. No, that's great. So, once you've done your estimates, somebody tell me who thinks they have the lowest or their partner had the lowest estimate in the room? Like they are lowballing this one. Who thinks they've got a low estimate? Anybody? Yeah. 600. Anybody lower than 600? Raise your hand. Yeah, back. 250. Anybody lower than 250? Lower than 250. Yeah. 100. Anybody lower than 100? Yeah. No? No. Heck no. What you thinking over there? Yeah. Okay, sorry. 100. 100. Thank you. Okay, so who thinks they have the highest guess? The highest estimate? Yeah. Yeah, go Sarah. Inflate that sucker.
2,800.
2,800. Anybody higher than 2,800? Yes, ma'am. I feel like an auctioneer. What? 5,212. Thank you. 5,212. Anybody higher than that? Okay, so we have somewhat of a wide range. 100 to 5,212. We're somewhere in there. Could we possibly narrow that down? So could you give me maybe some pieces that you would like to know, some information you would like to know about this situation that would help us to narrow this down? Does anybody have an idea? Yes, what can I tell you? The size of each box, thank you. Anything else you would like to know? The size of the trunk. Is there anything else you would like to know? No? Okay, we'll start there. The size of the box. Okay, and can you see this well? I can't see it well. Okay, so the size of the box, here are the dimensions of the box, the depth, width, and the height of the box. Okay. What's that? It's in centimeters. I am from Canada. Sorry. Okay, so yeah, it's in centimeters. Okay, this is the dimensions of the box. To save you the quick calculation, to do volume, what do we multiply? These three pieces, right? And so, do we need to know volume or area here? Volume, thank you. So, yes, we're going to do the volume of this. It ends up being just about 1,208 centimeters cubed. Okay, so that's the volume. Danny asked for the size of the trunk. It is 1.11 cubic meters of cargo space in the trunk. Okay, now there's a conversion there. We're not going to get into the weeds on the math because I know you want to, but we're going to avoid that just a little bit right now. Okay, so before I go any further, let me ask you this, all right? So you've directed a little bit of this, you've asked the questions, and we'll go to some of these others. What you want to find out, does anyone have a plan of what we're going to do here now that we know the volume of the trunk and we know the volume of the boxes? What would you do if they were converted correctly? What would you do? Yes?
Volume of the trunk divided by the volume of the box should give you number of boxes.
Thank you. So the volume of the trunk divided by the volume of each box, if they're converted correctly, would give you how many boxes would fit in that trunk, right? Yes? Feel good about it? Okay, so that's what we would do here. You don't necessarily need to do that, but I'd like you to kind of get a better answer, if you would. Could you get maybe a little closer and maybe verify that we're still within that range? Like if you get 1 million boxes, you're probably off. Okay, so or 0.1 boxes, you're probably off, right? So get a little closer and maybe use a little bit of a fudge factor here, right? The theoretical doesn't always match up with the practical. So get a bit of a fudge factor. Maybe you want to add or take away a little bit, and then give that answer, whatever your best answer is, give that again to your shoulder partner or somebody close by. Okay, go ahead and think about it just for a minute, and go ahead and do that. If I had have thought before or found a Girl Scout, I was going to provide cookies for the closest guess. I apologize, I didn't find any cookies. I like mint cookies. The mint Girl Scout cookies are my favorite. Okay, have you given maybe a little closer guess? Yes, sir.
Well, we know in the trunk there's 1,100,000.
Thank you for that, cubic centimeters.
110,000 cubic centimeters.
1,110,000 cubic centimeters in the trunk. So if you wanted to use that number, you could get a little closer. Okay.
Nathan on the board.
That's right. That's why you're here, Nathan. That's what Danny says. It wasn't me, but I love to have you too. Okay, so we're gonna show the answer. If you haven't given your answer to your friend, do that now, because when you're right, they were gonna pat you on the back. Okay. All right, here we go. Here comes the end video. Are you ready? Have you given your answer? 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Okay. Oh boy, past 100. Sorry to the girl in the back.
Right away. You were so close.
Oh my gosh, I heard. What'd you get?
So I said about 1,000, but after you gave us information.
Okay, cool. Anybody else get closer?
916.
916, that is way close. Nice. Very good. Okay, one clap for the lady up here. Ready? One clap. Awesome, good job. Okay, so thank you. I know, I heard like a visceral reaction when the video's answer came up. Like, woohoo! Right? I heard all that. Like, I don't hear that when I have my kids turn to the back of the book to find the answer in our math problems. Like, so did you find this a little more engaging than a typical math problem?
Yes.
I hope you did. You know, from here I might have my students conclude and give some sources of error why their computational answer was different from because the computational answer is actually 918, and this one's a little bit different. You know, build a model possibly extrapolating like different sizes of cars and different amount of cookies to build a model for that, or recreate or redesign the box of cookies to fit more cookies, or the vehicle to fit more boxes. Okay, so how could we do that and then persuade others that this is the best design? I might have them go this way, or I might have them look at the calories, right? Or what else did we say? Like how long it's going to take to get us there, or how it maybe impacts the fuel economy. Did you say a question earlier? I can't remember. I had a question from you or somebody. So I might have them explore in their own directions a little bit from here, right? Where we might go. And I want to note that this is an activity that can be enhanced with technology. So I did the same activity with principals in our district, and I collected all the responses on Nearpod folk, shout out back there. Okay, so I collected all the responses on Nearpod and saw their names, and some of them, Santa Claus works in our district apparently. So I saw their name and what their questions were at the beginning, because I didn't hear from all of you, right? I didn't get to hear from all of you, and that's because some of us are more confident and willing to sit in the front than others, right? Okay, so like, yeah, I didn't get to hear from all of you, but I would in Nearpod. I would hear a response from all of you. I didn't. I would go by you and say, hey, Susie, give me a response, please. Okay? So I would see all of your questions, and we would dive into these together. And I also get to see all your models. Like, you can draw your model out or your work out on Nearpod and show me. So this is one of the answers from one of our principals, which is spot on. So I get to see these things, right? And you know, this type of piece here, like I said, can enhance the work, empower those who might not otherwise be willing to share and use their voice. So again, I hope you found this more interesting. Why do you think this is more interesting than a traditional math problem? Any ideas, guesses? Sorry? It has cookies in it. Thank you. I like cookies, so I am automatically engaged. Yes?
The discussion that goes with it.
There's a discussion that goes with it. Thank you. That was a good thought. Yes? Multimedia technology, okay. Not all technology is created equal, clearly. Like, if I wanted to show you a video about mathematics, like this one is probably not going to get you pumping and like you did for me there earlier, okay. So yeah, no, but yes, multimedia does play a part in it. Any others? I often get the responses like, yeah, it's about technology, or you're using a video, or it's about real world application or some tie into something they're interested in. Yeah, it is part of those, but like also, like if I were to give you this question, this very same question from a textbook, you would, even though it's likely just as real world, just as cookie as the last problem, right? It is not nearly as engaging, is it? And so there's something to be said about the way you directed this, the way your choice and voice brought into this, and also how deep we were able to go. This is the example of the very shallow problem that you'd find in the textbook. It asks you to simply recall and compute. Recall the formula for volume, punch in the correct numbers, compute, and you are done. Okay? It's a shallow problem. This is a problem that a computer can do quite simply, right? That our students sometimes struggle with and are not necessarily engaged in, right? I want you to contrast that with what we just did, which is this, a more non-routine skill set, a much deeper stack of verbs, of actions that we took on, right? The discussion piece that you mentioned and others. okay, where I asked you to give me questions, your estimations, your limits, and go on, and give me a plan, and explain it, and verify, and undo your answer, and all these human things that you were involved in that were much more deep. And I think that is part of the key of why you were so involved here. Okay, and why we were able to go so much deeper. It's not just about deeper meaning though, or about deeper learning, okay, or more meaningful opportunities. It's also about valuing the students you have in your room. And so when we talk about valuing student voice, there's other tools for that, but it's important to know that students don't know, and they don't care really about what you're going to say. If you don't care about them, they just don't care. And so you need to show that value to them. And beyond, like you can use other tools like Socrative. I showcase Nearpod. I'll touch in on Socrative, a piece to exercise student voice. You can give out a class code, have students join and give their answers to different questions and even vote on the responses. There are so many tools like this, Go Formative, others I could go on. Okay, that allow you to engage student voice. That is incredibly important, that discussion piece, that tying in, that entrusting students. It's important. And if you want to spend more of your time because of your blended learning model or whatever other way you're spending more time one-on-one with students, that is crucial. And for those who support teachers, spending more one-on-one time with teachers to give them those coaching and make it based off their own passions and their own interests. That is key, right? So this is about choice and voice. I think it's the most crucial piece. I'll touch on a few others, okay? Empowering with access. In a day and age where advanced technology is available to all of us, so many of our educators banish or restrict the access that we have or ignore it, right? The opportunities of our wild childhood imaginations of being connected to everything, resources worldwide, allowing us to go beyond our wildest dreams and have resources beyond what we ever imagined. Okay, those are right at our fingertips now, and yet we, out of fear, often do not embrace it. So we can give more access to our students to these things to give them more anytime, anywhere learning, and recognize and respect the student voice. Okay, this rings true. Yeah, they're not going to take their textbook with them, but they're always going to have the internet in their back pocket, right? And so how do we enable these learners, and how do we go from the shift that the educators are not always the receptacle of all knowledge, okay, and they don't need to be the repository for it, but that students can learn at their own pace and at their own time in many ways. And so how do you organize this big bad world of the internet into bite-sized pieces that your students can engage with right away and feel not too overwhelmed? Well, I think an LMS does that. Learning management systems, and in our district we use Canvas, and I know many of you do as well, provides many of these empowering features for students to be able to personalize their own learning, to go in and take the pieces that they want, right, and to get that meaningful feedback from their teachers. Speaking of meaningful feedback, so there's so many opportunities for that. The teacher in the SpreedGruder Canvas app and the teacher app now, you can annotate student work, you can write comments, give video, audio, dictate comments, attach reference files, all these things right on your iPad or phone if you'd like. And that's so much more empowering. That kind of feedback and direction is so much more empowering than what you would find if you were to just give a score back, right? And so, like, I even recorded a little video with my students on like Halloween and showed them how frustrated I was with their work. And no, I'm just kidding, I didn't do that. That was fun though. There's all sorts of opportunities to do that kind of stuff with your students to empower them and give them that meaningful feedback. In addition, to differentiate learning is always difficult, right? It's always been so hard for me. Like, it's like, how do I organize all these binders of information and all this like stuff of different kids need to do this and advanced kids are here. And anyway, all that stuff, it's difficult. And so using Mastery Paths in Canvas or in other tools, I'm sure there's similar things, but Mastery Paths allows me to say, okay, from this score on in my quiz, you're going to work on this, and this score on, you're going to work on this. And in fact, I can even give choice. I can say, or you can do this, right? This or that. And allow that student choice and voice built right into my course so that I don't need to be juggling different binders and folders of paper and information for all my different students and tracking where they all are. My technology allows me to be more efficient so that I can focus on the real needs of my students. And if we're doing this with our students, why not with our educators in a blended learning model, right? You might have heard of Kite. It offers this kind of anytime, anywhere training on EdTech tools for teachers. But any sort of blended learning and opportunities for training, for PD, for teachers is an excellent way to have them have that same experience, that anytime, anywhere learning. Okay, so beyond that, let's look at data. Cory, don't talk to me about data right now. I don't even want to hear it. I hear that, okay? And you're like, I know I should be using data more often and more effectively in my instruction or in my school, but it's hard, man. It's hard. You know, it's hard to collect all of it and pull it into one spot. It's hard to make that visible, like so that like everybody can see the data and look at it. And it's like, oh, it's easy enough to read. I don't need to have a master's degree in statistics to know what I'm talking about. And then in addition, it's hard to like pinpoint and say, there's the actionable piece of data. Like those things are difficult. And so technology can help us with that. Because if we're without data, I actually drew up this slide when I was on the way to Paiute one day. Okay, Paiute, woo, yeah. If you've been to Paiute, there are huge signs along the freeway the whole time. Like, a deer is going to hit you, like massive deer signs, like glowing deer signs. Like, I'm going through it at night, I'm thinking, I'm going to be killed by a deer. And so, yeah, like we are possibly like this. Without data, we are just like frozen in the wandering freeway of like not knowing necessarily what to do with all these kids and all this data. Without being able to actually work off of our data, we often feel like that. So, in our district, and many of you might be looking at things like Mastery Connect or other pieces that organize assessment management systems that organize data for you, right? By standard, you're able to see exactly what students are working on. It easily collects all this data. So it takes data from, maybe you're working on a Scantron, or maybe you're importing the data, or maybe you are having students go onto their Chromebook and answer some questions, or maybe you have a rubric on your phone that you want to tap and see where they're at. All of that data comes into one place, into this mastery tracker, okay, and allows you to see exactly where students are at. Easily collected, it's easily visible, and I can easily see where I need to act, right? Where I need to remediate, which standards and which kids. So this is powerful for teachers. These types of tools make us more efficient and more effective in our work. Okay, along the lines of collecting that data in Mastery Connect, at least is how many of our teachers started, by just using like a Scantron, a bubble sheet. We're not talking way advanced here, but they're able to scan that, and again, that data is going directly into the tracker. You know, as they scan it, a little check mark, and you'll see that data piece arrive here in the tracker, right? And so you can know instantaneously where your students are at. Beyond that, you can use a rubric, like I said, on your iPad or iPhone, and just touch the levels of the rubric, and automatically that data goes into that same tracker. Or if you want to get a little more advanced, you can do and create your own items for students to work off on the computer. You can create your own Sage type items like graphing. Like this will be automatically scored and the data will go into the tracker. Things like Sage items like select all that apply, like that's not easy for a computer always to score and manage, and so this tool makes that easy for us and our teachers in our district. It makes data way more easy. It makes those conversations about data way less, not again, right? And it really has empowered our teachers to be able to work off data and be more efficient and more effective. Also for our students, right? If you're looking at students who are using this tool and they're thinking of all the standards that they need to accomplish, it's nice when that daunting path lies ahead that they're able to look back and see how far they've come. Like they can see standard by standard where their progress has been. They can go in and see assessment by assessment where they've done, and it's very clear and visible and easy for them to pinpoint like, hey, I need to work here. I need to work on these standards to kind of boost up my score a little bit here and have a little better understanding of the content. Like that's where I need to go. So it's not like ambiguous, like can I bring teachers to cookie, or teachers to cookie to teachers. I've got cookies on the brain today. You know, like what can I do exactly to improve my understanding? And teachers can use this same data to like empower their work in their PLCs, right? And so as they're working with their professional learning teams, they can gather from each other like where I'm doing well and where my team could help me out a little bit by comparing some teacher data on common formative assessments. This is powerful stuff, and it's difficult to come by in other forms. So I encourage people to look at assessment management systems like Mastery Connect and others that allow you to have that empowerment from your data and allow you to make yourselves more effective and more focused on the things that matter. Okay? Last piece, recognition. We know it's a great motivator. Like I know this is a true thing, is a truism, right? That I'm often motivated by recognition I get from my superintendent or my peers. Like this is, yeah, I want to hear that. That gets me excited, it gets me empowered. And so can you do that for your students? Of course. you're posting your little Hall of Fame out in the hall, you're posting things on the website, you're posting things on social media for the school account. You're doing these kinds of things that empower teachers and empower students. And students will work hard for these kind of things that mom and dad are going to see, right? And teachers will do the same kind of thing. You can use other tools like Blooms if you don't like Twitter or your website. Maybe you think that's a little too public for your student and their picture and whatnot. You can use tools like Blooms that send automatically student results on behavior and other work and send that directly to their parents as opposed to through social media or whatever means you're looking at now. That's one thing that you might want to look at. But in addition, like I said, teachers also thrive off of this. So in Iron County, I go around often to classrooms. I'm taking pictures of the great things our teachers are doing, recognizing them for their great work, letting the community know about the great people we have working with their kids. Like, this is vital. This is important. That type of recognition is empowering. And like I said earlier, if you're willing to recognize and empower those who you work with, and you want to get a little bit more out of them, they're willing to give blood, sweat, and tears after you've gone to bat for them, you've put out for them, right? So this is a big thing, recognition. Okay, so just in a bit of conclusion, these are my 4 little ones. The oldest is 6, just turned 6. The youngest is 1. And this is their favorite place in the world. We're at Disneyland this past Christmas. Here are their names. This is Skyly. This is Sophie. And Sydney there, crowded in. And then Stevie. No, I'm just kidding. I couldn't do the SEE thing anymore. I couldn't do it, so we called him Dawson. Okay, his name's Dawson. But yeah, these are my kids, and they're important to me. And I plead with you, I guess, to let their voices be heard, to give them the tools that they need to be empowered, to lift them up, to empower each of them to find opportunity and fulfillment and meaning and love in learning, in their work, in their life. Like, that's really important to me. And it's probably important to you about your kids also. And of course, if it's important enough for our own kids, you know where I'm going with this, it's important enough for all kids, right? And for the administrators in the room, if it's important enough for all our kids, it's certainly important enough for our teachers to feel empowered, correct? So, this type of empowerment is important. And if we're not willing to do it, I fear the future. I look at Mr. Couch's remarks earlier about, the future of all these automations and all these new companies that have emerged, and he ends with like, hey, I maybe envision a future of schools, or just schools without classrooms, and automatically teachers are like, oh my gosh, what does that mean for me, right? But maybe we're willing to adjust what we do and adjust our practice a little bit, and make empowerment and humanization of the classroom a real thing, so that we're not just replaced and automated as content delivery mechanisms, right? We're not that, are we? We can do better than that, I think. And we need to do better than that. At least the kids in Washington County, because they work with my kids. No, I'm just kidding. Everybody needs to do better than that, right? Everybody needs to do better than that. Because otherwise, if you don't want to make these changes, if you don't like change, you're going to like your relevance even less. When Apple opens up their school for all online, and all the kids are like, oh, I'd much rather learn from Apple's content delivery system than my teacher, right? We need to make our own niche here with the humanization of education and the empowerment of our kids. So I hope you've taken a little bit from this. I hope you've seen, I guess, the difference between the power that you hold and how you might wield that, or how traditional teachers might have wielded that power, and then also to the empowerment that you can give, right, to our students. How does that change? And what shifts do we need to make? I've noted a few of them, and I'll review them just quickly before I close here. Here's some call to actions you might consider. Something you might take note of today, and you might implement Monday. Okay? Support and hear the voice of your teachers or of your students. Offer choices and extensions. Value their opinions and their interests, right? Do those things. This isn't like a hypothetical, do it. Focus on those human skills, because that's where we add value. We're not adding value by teaching kids to compute, although I think that's important. But we can add value in other ways, certainly in human skills, like our 21st century skills. Grant access to the big wild world of the web and technology. Grant access to that. Do not inhibit it or restrict it so that it's only available in this little box, in this time frame, in this window. like grant access to that. And maybe organize that through a learning management system. So that makes it more palatable for your students, and for yourself it's a little safer too. Okay, demand actionable data tools, because your administrators, everyone knows data is important, but I need to be able to work off of that. I need to be able to be empowered to actually use the data and not spend all my time gathering it and making it actionable. So demand those things, and finally recognize and share successes of both your teachers and your community and your students. Hopefully you find something in here. You might not find it all attractive and like, I'm going to do this Monday. Cory, you have transformed my life, I'm converted. Okay? But hopefully you found at least one thing today that you can take from here and that you can implement. If we've done that, I think I feel good about what I've done. So I want you to consider how you will empower. What is that one thing that you will take and that you'll implement? And how you might transform the typical use of teacher power to expand that to empower others. I hope you'll do that for the sake of my kids, your kids, all kids, teachers, education system more broadly. Okay, I hope you will do that. Thank you for your attention today and your participation. Appreciate it. If you have questions,